And it sounds like, to me, like he's saying, essentially, this is what they had with them when they left out.
That's the state's, we're in agreement, Your Honor.
So I'm going to permit that.
Overrule the objection and permit it?
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so can we move to the other one that I was going to listen to? But we know he a shooter.
Yes, Your Honor.
That pretty easy.
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Okay.
So we're going to 32544 for the record.
All right.
Three 2529.
You know her last name? No. You know where she rented from? So, after the shooting, do you know what happened to the car and the guns?
Yeah, they dropped off at OG Finish Farm.
Do you know the guns still around or they got rid of them?
More likely they got rid of them. I think when they dropped them off at Finish Farm, he pulled it got rid of them.
How do they normally get rid of guns?
I don't know. That's the first time they ever usually keep them.
Yeah. Okay. So, did anybody get word to shooting up, or this is just an opportunity?
They just wanted the name.
They just wanted the name.
Cause like, it used to be one multiple going out soon. They just wanted the name.
So did Woody slow down with all his bullshit? Or once Duck got killed, did Woody slow down with his stuff, or was he still?
Nah, when he seen that he had a lot of folk that ran with him, then he hung back for
Moody.
yeah. But see, they nobody really know Shannon like that until then you do.
Right.
Like those when we messed with him, he was around for with Woody from.
Right. So once he did that, it was kind of like we could trust and we know he was shooting.
He started mixing with Shannon for he started mixing with Shannon.
So he put Woody to the side and Shannon back to the Woody spot.
Yeah. So like Woody took Slug spot.
So, Shannon and
It is really, I don't know that it can be determined that he started messing hard with him is in response to him being a shooter, to him doing that, to him coming around with Woody and it being okay because he's Woody's friend. I mean, I just think that I don't think you can base that Thug started messing hard with Shannon on him having been a shooter. I'm going to exclude that.
Understood, Your Honor.
Okay. So moving to 144. Give me just a second. All right.
Your Honor, with this next one, I'm in agreement. This is probably this section where Zachary is stating that his older brother used to hang out with defendant Stillwell. And then Zachary says something along the lines of, until Shannon got locked up,
Okay.
the state would omit or ensure that the jury never hears about Shannon getting locked up, but
Okay.
may ask him about him knowing his brother.
Okay. That takes care of that objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you.
Now, this next one, Your Honor, 32, I don't believe, I'm pretty certain she's not referring to Shannon. I think she's referring to Terry Rivers,
Okay.
who, I don't know if his name has come up in this. He's certainly not in this case. He's certainly not indicted. My understanding is he's alleged to be associated with some of these gentlemen in some way, but then Gaither adds, yeah, I know Terry Rivers used to steal ATM machines. And I just think that that's just
Okay.
throwing another.
Your Honor, the state agrees and concedes this.
All right.
this
If
portion
y'all are
of it.
going to agree, tell me before we
Yes, Your
listen
Honor.
to the argument. We can save Mr. Short and my voices.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
There is some agreement with this next number 33.
Okay.
So they're talking about the Dexter Montgomery shooting, which was in Act 36. We've already introduced at trial. Mr. Zachary was not present. He admits in this interview he doesn't have any personal knowledge
Right.
about it. The part of this that the state may get into is the photographs used in that case. For example,
Mhm.
there's gas station surveillance stills.
Okay.
He recognizes, for example, Demise McMullen, who was one of the defendants in that case.
Okay.
The same photographs that Detective Gaither and Dennis are showing him during this portion are already in evidence. And so depending on, there may be some questions with those exhibits,
Okay.
but we're not going to be asking Mr. Zachary anything about what happened to Dexter Montgomery because he doesn't know.
All right. You'll just be using it.
That's fair. I mean, I don't, Mr. Murphy, DK, took the stand and he's acknowledged that it was him and Nard. So I don't think that's really in dispute. I would add though, and this doesn't show up in the transcript, Investigator Dennis has a habit of doing this with a lot of these gentlemen he interviews. He takes out a picture of Dexter Montgomery's head, which is actually in evidence. And he just goes into this big thing about, oh, he's got half a head. What do you think of that? And I just don't
Right.
think that's appropriate.
Okay.
But if for some reason there's an issue about who was there, I do concede that Quindarius Zachary, after Investigator Dennis does the half a head thing, does show him pictures from the scene, and he says, oh, that looks like Nard, that looks like DK, or
Okay.
so I concede that he
Alright.
does do that.
So to the extent that this is him identifying, yeah, that's that person. I know that person. That's this person. You don't need commentary about, oh my God, look at this guy's head. You know. that.
Agreed, Your Honor.
Okay. Great.
Number 34 also is an agreement.
Okay.
This is in relation to something that's been suppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, rate of a
I think y'all
house,
told me
so-
that already.
That's right, Your Honor.
Okay.
35, this is a portion where Mr. Zachary that they're asking his girlfriend, Summer Good, says that basically she doesn't like him hanging out with them. And then he mentions defendant Stillwell because like Zachary gets in trouble with them. And so the state feels that, in the context of when, and the Detective Dennis is going to be also, he's testified before, but he's going to testify again. He's on the witness list and he's in this interview. This could become partially relevant in regards to this. In what's going on in Mr. Zachary's life at this time, he's trying to pull back, in his words, and kind of get a
Right.
fresh start, spend more time with his girlfriend, things like that. And so this is kind of wrapped into why at this moment in time he's in jail. He's speaking with the police. And so the fact that his girlfriend, who he's kind of self-admits is very close with, interacting a lot. She doesn't like him hanging out with them. And so the state does feel like this could become relevant with the right questions of Mr. Zachary.
Okay. And it could. So I think at the point in time when y'all think it does, that's maybe something we'll just have to wait on.
Okay.
Okay.
Your Honor, the next one, number 36. So Zachary is discussing when his brother died. And what he says is he died when Haiti Gang robbed him.
Okay.
Haiti Gang is kind of a subset and affiliated with If Gang. And so the state feels like this is very relevant because Zachary's older brother, who in an earlier part of the interview, he says was one of the, Zachary says,
Founders.
correct,
Yeah.
that the fact that Haiti Gang robbed and killed his brother, that is relevant to how he kind of got involved in a gang. So it's not as much about what happened. We're not gonna be asking him details of his brother's murder, but
Mhm.
this portion could become relevant when we ask him questions about his brother if he, so that's why the state wants this to come in, at least in relation to, because the objection was discussion about the murder of the witness's brother. So it'd be a brief discussion of that, if at all, depending on how he answered.
Okay. Well, I mean, 159 looks to be like the details of it. So even based on what you're talking about, this part may not come in.
Yeah, Sean, like we won't be asking him like what street his brother that happened on, or
Okay.
we would just be asking him, or we may never get to a part where we have to play this to discuss this part, but it's just about the fact that Haiti Gang robbed and killed his brother.
Okay.
That's the part the state wants, is relevant.
All right. All right, number 37 is on, starts at the bottom of 163.
Your Honor, this portion is when he's discussing the shooting of Dwayne Carter's tour bus.
Mm-hmm.
So Zachary, Detective Dennis personally sees Zachary when he arrives. They're at a nightclub outside. And then there's a lot of things that happen, some of which Zachary's present for, some of which he's not. And so he is not in any vehicles. He never, it says he's in a car that did the shooting, things of that nature, but he mentions being with different members that are there, like co-conspirators, defendants, other witnesses. You know, they go different spots in the city before they arrive at the nightclub. They go to places afterwards. The events of this shooting become something that gets discussed amongst each other. And so the objection was, the investigator testified about his theory, hearsay and speculation. The state's more concerned with what Zachary, you know, what he states happened. Like, for example, he's discussing what cars people went in, like Detective Dennis asked, did they put Thug's sisters out? Like, because some people got in different cars. And Zachary says, he's saying, I don't know where she lives, but he mentions, he confirms like Max is who he calls his sister was there. And so, and Mr. Shard, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a specific portion, but Zachary's knowledge of what happened that night will be something we'll be asking.
Want to keep your hairline where it is? Through Hims.com, you can explore a range of options that work best for you, so you can grow visibly thicker and fuller hair in just
the details of that night. And so I will not be asking him about Dennis's theory of what happened, but depending on what he testifies to, certain of these portions, you may need the question asked in his response, but this is kind of very much wrapped into how he testifies. because he goes through a lot of different facts of that night.
All right, and it seems like, Mr. Shart, you're objecting to man one, who's one of the investigators, saying, here's what I know, or here's what I saw. Is
I
that
am
right?
objecting to that. I mean, my understanding is that's Investigator Dennis, and he's already testified to what he saw on the stand.
Okay.
And
So they wouldn't be offering that for it to get in anything about what he actually saw. This would be if it becomes relevant to, if the answer becomes relevant.
this is the dilemma, Your Honor, as I see it. I concede that it seems pretty clear that Quindarius Zachary was at the compound that night. The compound, I don't know if Your Honor's familiar. I've been to the scene. It's
Gigantic.
it's very large.
Yeah.
It's unclear to me. I know that he was not on 285. That's pretty clear. Or he's saying he wasn't on 285 or when buses were shot.
Mm-hmm.
What's unclear to me is where he was when he's claiming people were leaving out and switching cars.
Right.
He's definitely giving that information. It's unclear to me if it's based on, and this was a widely reported event. There was hip hop gossip, internet sites almost immediately that are reporting what happened, different theories. So it's unclear to me whether he's there when he's saying people were leaving in certain cars.
Yeah.
And I concede if he was there, if it's established that he was there and he's saying he saw things with his eyes, I mean, it is what it is for me, and I'll have to deal with that in cross-examination. But what I don't want is the state for him to say, well, I wasn't there for that part, and then the state to start impeaching him. Well, didn't you say this and this and this? And then it was just all based on speculation or internet gossip or other things. So I don't know what his source of information is for some of this stuff. And that's what I'm struggling with. I understand in a certain circumstance, he would be able to testify about what he saw. Well, in any circumstance, he'd be able to testify to what he saw. But I'm not sure he saw these things. I'm not saying he didn't. I don't know.
Well, I think we already made rulings, and by we, I guess I mean me,
Well,
about that.
you made rulings, my recollection is you made rulings about what Demekion Garlington allegedly told him about the Donovan Thomas situation. I don't.
Okay, I thought we had talked about him. Maybe we haven't, but I mean, to the extent he gets on the stand and says, yeah, I wasn't there, I don't know any of this, the state can cross-examine him about what he said before, and it may be that it's established through, not cross-examine, but examine, and then y'all can cross-examine him about whatever the inconsistencies are. Even if he says, you know what, I don't know who got into any car. I wasn't there. I was in Alaska at the time. They can cross him. I mean, they can examine him, impeach him with this.
Because that would be clearly inconsistent with his prior statements. But my concern is if he says, you know, as the crowd was dispersing, Investigator Dennis saw me and said my name and I ran.
Yeah.
And I ran from the scene and got into a car and left and went home. And then they're like, well, didn't you say that Shannon got into this car? And it turns out that his testimony is actually that he wasn't there for that part. And what his prior statements were based on something else.
But who knows whether it's true that
I understand.
what his testimony is, you know, whatever, next Wednesday, that he says, oh my gosh, the cops saw me and I ran and I went home and got in my bed. We don't know whether that's true or not. So he's still going to be able to impeach him. And then y'all are going to have to ask, you know, hey, you know, how are we supposed to believe that this is true? And he can say, we can see it on my ring camera. I walked in the house, and y'all will just have to explore that. I mean, we don't have any way to know. They're telling the truth. They're supposed to swear to tell the truth and then tell the truth, but we don't know that. So I can't do what it is that you're asking me to do here. Okay.
I understand the court's ruling.
All right.
Your Honor, number 39 and number 40, they all are in relation to the same topic regarding the shooting of Dwayne Carter's tour bus.
Okay, hang on. Did that cover 38 and 37?
It definitely covered 37.
Okay, because I thought we were on 37. So,
My apologies, Your Honor. So
Okay.
for 38, really 38 through 40, and we can take them one at a
Okay.
time. They all talk about the same event.
I would agree with 38 that what your ruling was just covered.
okay. All right. So moving to 39 and 40, is this also still the same incident?
I'm catching up.
Me too.
Okay, so on 39, excuse me, 30, we're on 39. He is saying that someone said we shot up the tour bus, but there's a pronoun we, and it's unclear who the declarant is or where that's coming from. He's saying that people showed up at the studio later that night and someone said we shot up the tour bus.
Okay. Okay. So does he ever say who showed up at the studio later?
He does mention where various people come, but I don't have memory of him ever clarifying exactly. Well, I will say this. Give me 1 minute, Your Honor. I'm trying to find this part in my more detailed notes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it says after they shot up the bus, what happened? We met up at the studio. What were they saying? They're basically saying we shot up the bus. But we don't know who the we is from here, but we may know who the we is from if he somewhere else says, here are the people that showed up at the studio.
And Your Honor, there is a portion where he's discussing who switched cars.
Okay.
And Zachary, so Detective Dennis says, so Max, referring to one of Defendant Williams' sisters, and Shannon switched spots. And Zachary says, told everyone they were going to watch him, call him, meet at the studio, say we're going to go shoot up the tour bus. And Detective Dennis is like, they said this? And Zachary says, I don't know what the hell made him shoot up the tour bus anyways. Oh, my apologies. Yes. They were at the studio. Say, we're going to go shoot up the tour bus. Detective Dennis says, they said this. And Zachary says, yeah, I don't know what the hell made him shoot up the tour bus anyways. Detective Dennis, who said it? And Zachary says, Pee-wee, referring to Jimmy Winfrey, who was the individual. It was a Cobb County case, but relation to this incident. And then Shannon said it, and Detective Gaither's like, well, who was more hype about it? And he says Shannon. Now, I believe this context is before the shooting, whereas what we're talking about is afterwards, but this is kind of very much wrapped into how, when we get to this part of the interview, we'll be asking him questions about that night. And so depending on how that questioning goes and what his answers are, he will have to have, the foundation for who he was speaking with or interacted with. And I actually say a little bit further, Your Honor, and I can actually play this if we need to. I have 3:45:49. Detective Dennis says, after they shot up the bus, what happened? Zachary says, we met up at the studio. Detective Dennis says, they came back to Metropolitan. What did they say? And Zachary says, they say they just shot up Wayne's tour bus. It was Max's truck with them in there and Pee Wee's car, referring to Mr. Winfrey.
Mhm.
Don't know who Pee Wee was with. And Gaither's like, so both cars up there, other cars following them? And he says, probably follow them to Expressway, not sure if they followed them to the shooting.
Mhm.
And then he just goes into a diatribe about how Mr. Winfrey came into their friend circle. So I don't see where he definitively says who it was at the studio told him. But this event happening, there's a lot of communication about it because it becomes a big incident that happened. And so I don't know definitively who at the studio told Mr. Zachary, but
I mean, I know that this is alleged to be a gang act, and I would assume part of your RICO.
correct, Your Honor.
Okay. The only complication is with our potential limiting instruction about, it would only be charged against the people that it's charged against.
And it's Act 39. It's only in relation to the RICO count because this incident happened in Cobb County. So this is
That makes it easier.
yes, yes, Your Honor. So
All right. So then that it is, yes.
Your ruling, only Mr. Winfrey is alleging that overt act. He's not on trial.
Okay, but it is alleged to be an overt act in furtherance of the RICO conspiracy, right?
it is an act in relation to count one, which every defendant's charged with count one.
Right. Okay.
It's true. But also the overt acts have a statute of limitations of 5 years from the time that the indictment's returned. This is in 2015. There's a series of overt acts that Judge Glanville said, I understand your argument. We'll get to that. He just passed on it, basically, that those could not be considered by the jury in reaching a verdict. I asked for a special verdict form. So all of this, I just want to raise your
Okay, now
attention.
I appreciate that if that's yet another pending determination for me to make, but I would think that they can still be, nobody's being, even if it were in Fulton County, nobody's even potentially being convicted of this act, but I would think that statute of limitations or no, it can be considered by the jury in determining whether the people charged are guilty of a RICO violation. So if you've got case law that says differently, and if you already filed it, just let me know where to find it. But if you,
And Your Honor,
and is that the argument that you're making, that they cannot even consider when they're considering whether anybody is guilty of a RICO violation, acts that there is a statute of limitations for and that statute has run?
So I think when you say they, my position.
They, the jury.
Okay, so the jury can only, they're going to have to find the overt act because it's a conspiracy.
Uh-huh.
That overt act must be, in my opinion, and the case law that I'll again show the court or show this honorable court would be within 5 years.
Okay,
But-
well, if there's case law that says that, then certainly I'll take a look at it. And it sounds like that issue is still on the table to be determined, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, being a newer addition to this team, I wasn't present when I'm being told that this issue has been addressed before. And so if there's going to be further, I don't have the case law right now, but in terms of Act 39, the fact you can charge overt acts in furtherance of a conspiracy to happen outside of Fulton County. That part is clear.
Oh, yeah, no, he's not talking
And-
about where it happened. He's talking about statute of limitations having run.
And there is, to my knowledge, and we can, I don't have a case to cite right now, but we can, if this needs to be briefed, we will brief it. But that is not the state's understanding with,
Not the court's understanding of it either, but I mean, been wrong before. I could be wrong right now. It's not my opinion that matters. It's what the case law says that matters. And if it has already been briefed by both sides, super, just point me to which brief and which response I should be looking at. And it very well may have been addressed before, but not decided. Ms. Lev, do you think it's already been decided?
Judge, that's what I was just saying. I
Okay.
believe that this issue was raised by Mr. Steele very early on, and I believe that it was decided in the state's favor against his position.
Okay.
But I was saying that we can check the transcript for that because my firm belief, because I remember the argument, is that it was actually argued and decided. We will also look for an order to that effect. But I specifically remember Mr. Steele's assertion regarding a statute of limitations. I believe that it may have been Mr. Floyd that argued that,
All right.
but we'll check and see.
All right. Well, thank you. And whatever you find, send to me or point me to it at least. Now, this is not really an evidentiary ruling that's been, assuming it has been decided. This isn't really an evidentiary ruling. This is a ruling that's going to impact how I tell the jury to deliberate on issues and what kind of verdict form we need. And so it really is something that I don't find myself bound by whatever the prior ruling was, even if it was made. I want to take a look at it myself and make my own determination based on the case law. So y'all just, again, point me to what I ought to be looking at, and I'll look at that and then make a ruling.
And Your Honor, so that I'm making certain that we are speaking apples to apples, Mr. Steele's assertion is that because the statute of limitations on the overt acts have run, that the jury is not allowed to consider the overt acts?
That's what I think he's saying. No.
I'm just saying to deliberate for the actual verdict. Let's say that we're asking for a special verdict form. There's 191 overt acts in count one. Let's say the Honorable Court grants a special verdict form, and every one of any overt act within the statute of limitations within 5 years of the return of the indictment says not proven. But then there's one or more overt acts before 5 years of the return of the indictment that says proven. Our position would be the overt act is not satisfied because the statute of limitations bars the conviction because the overt act was previous. I'm not talking about evidence because that shows the history of the quote
Right,
organization.
it could just be intrinsic or whatever. So
Right.
I mean, okay. So I mean, but I do understand they can consider it for whatever, the history and how it all fits together. But you are saying that case law bars the jury from returning a RICO conviction if the only overt acts that they find to exist are overt acts the statute for which has run.
Exactly.
All right, well.
And the state opposed at our previous argument a special verdict form. That was the Honorable John Floyd. And what Judge Glanville said was, we'll address that later.
Okay, well,
That's what
we
happened.
need to address that. What? I think you just lost the battery in your.
I did. I'll put it in writing because, I think it's a fascinating issue, but we'll put it in writing.
Okay, and if it already has been put in writing, you don't have to do it again. You can just point me to, this was, motion number 50,000 filed on May 1st or whatever. If you haven't put it in writing yet, great, do that. And same for the state with regard to a response. And if there is a ruling, I want to look at that too. I mean, I don't want to reinvent the wheel either, but I will make my own determination about it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so where were we?
Your Honor, we were on 176, line 6 is
Yeah,
what we were
and
just
like-
discussing.
Okay,
And just to be clear, if the foundation is laid that Mr. Zachary is falsely asserting that my client stated that, then I understand that that's just going to be a subject for cross-examination. However, if it comes from a source, allegedly comes from a source other than my client, our stance would be that that would be either rank hearsay, something he read off the internet or something, or if it was said to him by someone else.
okay,
I'm just using an example.
sure.
Pee-wee, that would be spilling the beans. And that's,
Okay, well, and I'm rejecting your spilling the beans argument with regard to all of these things as they're going down and immediately after they go down. Now, if his source is off the internet, then that's a different story. But you have reason, you have a basis for, I mean, they all get, whomever they get together at the studio afterwards and talk about it. So,
Yes, Your Honor. And Zachary says we met up at the studio, and then Detective Dennis says they came back to
Yeah.
Metropolitan, and he says they say they just shot up the bus. So he's kind of responding to like a person he's around.
mhm.
So, but understand, and we will ask him the right foundation for that before just asking an out of the blue question of, they
All right.
told you they shot up Little Wayne's tour bus.
Okay,
And certainly the next two, Your Honor, the state
Mhm.
is in agreement in regarding Mr. Sharp's number 41, page 178, line 1 through 2. It's a comment that Gaither makes. So the state,
I'm going to withdraw. Can we deal with 140 first? 40 first.
my apologies, I skipped over that.
40 is just him saying what he feels that there were cars following on the expressway. He wasn't there for that. And he actually says they probably followed them to the expressway, but I don't know if they followed to no shooting.
Yeah.
So he's just speculating there.
he's basically saying beats me. So,
Yeah, yes, Your Honor. We will
Okay.
not be asking about
all right,
those cars on the highway.
40 is out by agreement.
41, I'm going to withdraw. And,
Okay.
and I just think it's needed to add context.
All right,
I think it would be improper in some ways, but quite honestly, it involves Mr. Steele's client and Mr. Adams' client, and Mr. Zachary says no. So I think it's needed to provide context to the no that Mr. Zachary gives.
all right, thanks.
And Your Honor, number 42, the state's in agreement of.
Okay. All right, and then 43 is our last item on this statement.
Your Honor, we're also conceding number 43.
All right.
We'll not be talking about this
Okay,
topic
thank you.
with Mr. Zachary.
All right, then we've gotten through this statement. All right, we'll take a break in just a second. Housekeeping wise, did Ms. Love, were you able to email over to everyone last night what you have so far?
I sent some, and then I have the broader folder containing Mr. Sledge's exhibits that numbered, and so I will share that. I haven't shared it because I was actually still typing in it just now, but I will share that with counsel for the defense. And Your Honor, as I look towards next week, it would be Mr. Sledge before Mr. Zachary.
Okay.
So,
So we did this in the wrong order, but. All right, that means we need to get to all of what might be used with Mr. Sledge today.
that's the folder that
Okay.
they're about to,
All right, well,
and it's not,
not voluminous.
I don't consider it voluminous,
Okay.
but, it's not.
Okay.
I'm gonna drop that.
All right, so go ahead and send that now. And then we've got to sort out potential jury instructions for when they come back today. We're not going to have court on Friday. Okay. So let's take a 10-minute restroom break and come back and get to work. No. Somewhere else.